Okay, let's dive right in. Today, we're challenging a massive assumption about the working world, the illusion that procedural order is a universally understood concept. Welcome to this explainer. The source material we're looking at uncovers a fascinating dynamic that literally breaks organizations apart from the inside out, often completely unnoticed by leadership. We usually think that a rule is just a rule, and everyone interprets corporate governance exactly the same way. But we're going to look at what actually happens when that shared understanding shatters, and how we can mathematically predict the fallout.
So we're starting with a pretty chilling question. Imagine an Orwellian 1984-style scenario, but it's wrapped in the soft communal imagery. We have to ask, is this just some dystopia, or a real warning that procedure can be weaponized? The prevailing assumption in a lot of organizational design is that if you wrap a heavy-handed, manipulative policy in a warm, fuzzy, communitarian gloss, saying things like, we're doing this for the family or for the team, people will just accept it. The assumption is that this soft framing makes the tyrannical order palatable. But does it actually work?
Well, hard data out of the Netherlands reveals a stark negative 0.5423 Pearson correlation between this exact Orwellian scenario and the deeply order-driven psychological stage known in spiral dynamics theory as the blue vMEME. Think of the blue system as the part of our psychology that deeply values structure, safety, truth, and bureaucracy. Now, you might assume that folks who love rules would be totally fine with an Orwellian system, right? But this negative correlation proves the exact opposite.
And with a critical value resting at 0.3608, this negative correlation is highly significant. It tells a profound story. People operating from a mindset that craves legitimate order have an incredibly sensitive radar for fake, manipulative control, no matter how much of that communitarian gloss you paint over it. They instantly recognize when a system is trying to game them.
So the absolute crucial point here is that as the blue value system strengthens, it completely strips away that performative manipulation. It replaces it with authentic, procedural clarity as the true baseline for governance. They don't want a facade of teamwork hiding a tyrannical agenda. They want clear, honest, and authentic rules. They literally demand that the logic of the order matches the reality of the procedure.
Part 1. The prediction gap. Fractured value system responses.
But what actually happens when that manipulative anchor is removed and the communitarian gloss stops acting as a warning signal? What happens when a governing body or a corporate leadership team normalizes this manipulation? The source material uses a brilliant prism metaphor here. A single governance signal fractures into wildly different behavior realities depending on an employee's psychological operating system. If that tyrannical gloss is removed or normalized, the impulsive, power-driven red system exploits the ambiguity to break rules and reclaim autonomy. The efficient, achievement-driven orange system, it just archives all the ideological messaging as non-performance noise and completely ignores it. And the community-driven green system perceives a tragic loss of collective action. One rule, three totally divergent reactions.
This brilliantly illustrates the butterfly effect of ignored psychological profiles. It's a rapid escalation from simple signal distortion straight down to total coordination collapse. When you assume everyone speaks your procedural language, and they don't, you get signal misalignment. That immediately leads to a subtle erosion of your legitimacy. People start whispering in the break room. That breeds systemic distrust. And finally, this leads to total coordination collapse. The entire system just breaks.
Ultimately, this misalignment results in a total leadership legitimacy crash, where compliance turns into silent resistance and the spreadsheet completely misses the disaster. This is the truly terrifying part for leadership. You might still be the CEO on paper. Your financial spreadsheets might even look fine because you've scaled your control mechanisms. But in reality, you have lost the authority to lead. Your team is just going through the motions, complying on the surface while actively resisting you underneath.
Part 2. The Algebra of Conscience, Simulating Systemic Stability.
To stop this collapse, we have to move from gut instinct management to a rigorous mathematical framework. If human emotion and psychological value systems are this volatile, we can no longer rely on standard cost-cutting metrics or subjective empathy. We need a predictive engine. And thanks to an upcoming 2026 trend called AI vibe coding, where users instruct language models to build complex applications using just natural language, we get tools like the SD Navigator interface. This literally turns the messy soul and worldview profile of a company into a solvable, dynamic programming equation. It calculates a state vector representing the psychological profile of the team, measuring psychological sensors like fear and trust, and allowing you to simulate management actions before you ever make a move.
If we model a management control like, say, an unpaid vacation,
We see how the algorithm accurately predicts the fallout. Tribal purple teams will bond over the sacrifice. Orange teams will quit over the inefficiency, and green teams will accept it entirely out of empathy for their colleagues. This is exactly why standard management fails. You apply Control U1, an unpaid vacation, to an orange achiever, you've just blocked their career trajectory, and they're going to update their resume immediately. But the exact same policy presented to a green, community-focused team is accepted positively if it means saving a coworker's job. Same action, completely opposite behavioral results, all decoded by understanding the hidden wiring.
This forces a complete shift from the old mechanical chainsaw management approach of blindly cutting costs to a new world model where transitions depend on mapping hidden human fears and trust. The old world treated the company like a machine and employees as cogs. If costs were too high, you just fired a cog. But the new world math recognizes that the organization is a living, breathing organism. When you remove a cog, the fear vector of the remaining staff spikes, productivity plummets, and your simple linear cost savings actually result in a massive financial and systemic loss.
The real mathematical genius here is the objective function. It weights human fear at 0.9, which is almost as heavy as financial cost. It mathematically penalizes leaders for destroying the mental health of their teams. In this dynamic programming model, you're trying to maximize systemic stability, which is your J-score, by assigning a massive 0.9 penalty weight to employee fear and a 0.8 weight to well-being. The math literally demands that you treat your people well. It proves mathematically that a toxic, fear-based workplace is just inefficient.
By predicting these outcomes before they break the system, this dynamic programming model acts as what we call scalable empathy. It processes the conscience of thousands of people simultaneously without human bias. Human managers have empathy, sure, but it's often biased by their own psychological profile. An orange, hyper-competitive manager might force a green, collaborative employee to compete, thinking they're helping, when they're actually crushing them. This model, however, listens to all the profiles equally. It calculates the ripple effects on every single worldview, scaling empathy across the entire collective. I want to leave you with this final, haunting provocation to consider the next time you assume everyone in your organization speaks the same procedural language. What breaks when your legitimacy signals stop being shared? When the communitarian gloss fades and people start interpreting your rules through the prism of their own hidden fears and values, will your system hold? Or are you heading blindly toward a legitimacy crash? It's a question you absolutely can't afford to ignore. Thanks for diving deep into this explainer with me.